Yeah, I'm going to talk about the sustainability challenge of renewable energy development. I think let my presentation be after Nancy Yu is good, as you talk about how the renewable energy is developing in China, and so I will talk about how the sustainability issues. Yeah, if we look at the renewable energy development, this figure is about the renewable energy in Europe. We can see from the figure that the percentage of renewable energy application in Europe is around. Yeah, you can see that number. Yeah, if you look at the UK, is around 5 to 10%, if I'm right. Yeah. So the share of the average share of the renewable energy in the EU is maybe now more than 15%. If we look at the case in China, I searched the number through the internet, but I haven't put it here. Now the percentage of renewable energy in China is around 10%, but Chinese government have a goal to raise the number to 20 or more than 20% in the next 10 years. Nancy has also say how the solar energy, how the wind energy is developing in China. The solar and the wind are the two key renewable energies. But today I want to talk about the renewable energy together to have a sustainability view to look at the renewable energies. If we talk about the sustainability, we know they have three metrics. They are about the social, the environmental impacts, the economic factors. If we talk about the renewable energy, usually people consume how the technical aspects, as Nancy has just said, how many patents, how the innovation actions is doing has been done in China or in the international level. Also the commercial station, that's the incentives, how the training or how the market feedback about the renewable energy actions. So I'm thinking of these things. The usual challenge of applying the renewable energies should be, for my personal understanding, should be, for example, the high environmental cost in the production process. Also, the unclear social benefit in the whole life cycle. When I search the existing researches, I haven't found many publications talking about the social benefits of applying the renewable technologies. Also, the high economic cost comparing with the conventional one. But now the cost is really declining. For example, the solar PV, it can be comparable to the power generation. And also the unclear environmental challenge for demolishing and the disposal process. Also, for example, the solar PV, do you know how long is the life cycle of the solar PV? Do you know that? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? 20 years. Do you have any other answer? You can guess. How many years? 20 years, 30 years? Depends on the quality. Yeah, good answer. Normally it's 25 in if we say in average. So I think in China's case, we still have almost 10 years to facing the demolishing time. But maybe in Europe, you have less, maybe 5 to 10 years. So how we can demolish and dispose of these solar PV panels is another very important thing. It will face many environmental impacts, challenges. So these years I begin to think these questions, and today I want to talk. I want to raise these questions. The renewable energies are energy saving in the operation process. Yeah, most of the renewable energies we consider they are energy saving, but are they sustainable? When we ask are they sustainable, we want to look at the environmental impact or say other social benefits. And are these renewable energies sustainable in their life cycle? For example, in the production process, and how about if we involve the demolishing process? This one is I done almost 5 years ago. I began to think about the indicators if we want to evaluate the sustainability of the renewable or say the low carbon technologies. This one is I look at the building sector. I select several building energy saving technologies, and I design these sustainability assessment indicators. I look at the economy facts and also the environmental, or also include the energy, the greenhouse gas emission reduction, and the environmental quality, the land resource use, all these environmental impacts indicators. Also, I want to look at the social benefits, that is the employment generation, the technology safety. Yeah, this is what I design. And I look at these common energy saving technologies of the building sectors. And what I find is that these renewable technologies, including solar PV, solar thermal, and geothermal pump, these are renewable energies. They have good sustainability score if we compare to other building energy saving technologies. For example, the insulation and the lighting energy saving, these other technologies. But they have relatively higher cost for the energy saving. Yeah, if we compare to the other technologies. Yeah, this is what I find in this study. Also, I begin to look at some specific technologies. For example, the ground source heat pump. I have the case study in Shanghai, and I evaluated, I take the survey and do more than 20 or 30 the investigations, case studies, and I begin to think in the life cycle process of the ground source heat pump. They will have the environmental let me see. Yes, they have the life cycle cost in all the processes of the life cycle. For example, the production, the designing, the installing, the operation, and also the demolishing. They all have the cost. If we look at the environmental impact, they surely have environmental impact in the production process, and also it has an obvious environmental impact in the operation process, because it will produce heat in the soil and also in the water when we use the ground source heat pump. So what I find in my finding is that the cost of the environmental impact in the operation process is comparable with the production. So these two processes we should pay attention. It is not only energy saving in the operation process, but it also has many high environmental costs. Yeah, this is what I find in this. And then I begin to look at the solar PV panels. I look into the production process, but also I begin to see what are the technologies, what are the environmental impact costs if we want to do the recycling things, and we also have to do the demolishing things. So if we consider the materials recycling to the production of solar PV, many of its materials can be recycled. For example, the silicon and the glass, also the aluminum. yeah, and the silver. These materials can be recycled. And if we compare the recycling scenario with the unrecycling scenario, we can compare the environmental impact cost is different. What is a surprising finding that not all the processes, the environmental impact is in this process, the recycling scenario has even higher environmental impact cost, because when we're doing the recycling things, the technologies and the facilities, it will also has some side environmental impact. That is what I mean in this process. But in the total accounting, in the average accounting, the recycling process has lower environmental impact compared to the unrecycling ones. This study, I begin to look at and I calculate the economic and the social impact of the solar PV in China. And this is what I get in the economic findings, that most of its cost located in the package and the materials. What I find interesting that if we look at the social effect of the production process, most of its social impact is not so attracting if we compare with the average industrial sectors, as the score is not so high. The average one is 0.6. What is surprising that this one is even very almost 0.2. It means that the GDP contribution of the solar PV industry is not attracting if we compare to the average level. I think maybe because it's the solar PV production in China is rely heavily on the subsidy, as the Chinese government announced many subsidy policies to producing the solar PV. So the GDP contribution is not so good, so attracting. This one is one of the ongoing research, as I'm thinking to monetization of the environmental impact of the solar PV. Why I am doing this, as I think, yes, when we look at the sustainability issue, we have the social impact, we have environmental impact, and we have the economic cost. So can we combine all the indicators to have a single result to tell the market, to tell the government that how much whether it's really cost beneficial or how much we cost when we are using solar PV. So I'm using the life cycle analysis method to calculate, to monitorize the environmental impact. What I find is that if we involve the environmental cost of solar PV, the life cycle, the payback time of the solar PV is more than 17 years. If we not involve the environmental impact cost, normally we say it's 3 years. Within 3 years we can pay the payback time of the solar PV. Yeah, so it's really a longer time if we involve the environmental things. Okay, so here's my other thinking. When we talk about the challenges of renewable energies application in China, when we talk about the sustainability things, I think it's not only in China but also in the international level. We should think whether we are having the misleading or really beneficial policies. For example, in China, we have many attracting subsidy policies, but whether it is really good in the long term for the market is a question. I think we have to discuss about it. And also, here's a surprising thing that we have many technologies. We have many installations of the wind and the solar power in many provinces of China. But the abandoned percentage of the wind and the solar is very high. The number accounted by the government is even more than 15%. So why it is happening? We have to answer this question. China also has a policy that says poverty alleviation by installing solar PV in villages. So it surely will have many social benefits. But how much is the benefit? Whether we can quantify the benefits of the social things. This is also interesting. And also what I mentioned previously is the disposal of renewable energies facilities, as we soon will face the demolishing of the renewable energy technologies. Here I actually in my research group, we have already begun some cooperation. We are beginning to do some survey for example, in villages in China to see how the social benefits, how the other sustainability issues in applying the renewable energies. I'm calling for cooperation. Anyone that you are interested in this issue, maybe we can together do some survey and to see how is the really renewable energies is applied in your country, in your place. We can together look at the policy things and the challenges. Okay, for a conclusion, what I want to say about in my presentation is that what we can do after we do the sustainability evaluation. I think it can be used for the technology or say strategy selection. It can be helpful to doing the regional sustainable planning. And also, I want to say that the life cycle thinking is important, as the energy saving in the operation process doesn't equal to sustainable, especially doesn't equal to sustainable in the whole life cycle of the renewable energies. And I also want to claim that the life cycle sustainability score expressed in economic way will be very useful and more acceptable to the market stakeholders, as in many cases they are not curious, or they don't mind what is the environmental cost of these impacts. But if we say in an economic way how much you will be cost, they maybe raise their attention. Okay, that's all what I want to say in this conference. Thank you.